Okay, let's go ahead and get started here. We have some assistants in the background here helping us get the other folks in. So we'll go ahead and get started here. We got a lot to cover. Again, Happy New Year. My name is Brian. I am the CTO here at PCA Technology Group, oversee our engineering department, also handle a lot of the security stuff here for the company. So we're going to be talking about cybersecurity today. Agenda is why are we even worried about it? Why are we talking about this? Some of the common attacks. We'll actually show you real live examples of things we've seen from some clients. Obviously heavily redacted, but and then USB mobile IoT devices. We'll talk a little bit about shadow IT, what that means if you're not familiar with that, and then finish up with passwords and MFA. So why are we worried about cybersecurity? Well, pretty much anytime you turn on the news or open up the internet or whatever your method of information is, you're seeing somebody is getting breached or your data's been stolen or you're getting notices in the mail. It's just a constant thing. So it's not getting any better, unfortunately. So the best way to try to help with this is to educate folks, which is why we hold these presentations. So ultimately, the goal of the theory behind implementing cybersecurity is really protection for the employees, for your client data, for the employees' well-being, obviously, and then the organization health for sure. So, the other thing too is AI. We've got to keep in mind, AI is a big thing right now. It's a real big buzzword. It means different things to different people, but that can be leveraged for both good and bad. We'll touch a little bit more on that later down the road. If you're not implementing AI, we'll give you some suggestions on what you should do prior to that. If you are implementing AI, we might enlighten you to some things you should have thought about before you've done that, that maybe you didn't do. So, also some insurance companies now, if you're in a compliance industry or you have cyber insurance, they do require proof of implementations now as well too. So if you're not doing cybersecurity and you're not doing it well, and you do have cyber insurance, when that comes up for renewal, they may ask you some specific questions that they may not have asked before. As I mentioned, this situation with bad actors getting inside is getting worse. Those insurance companies are tired of paying out claims for negligence on their clients' parts. So they're now asking very specific questions. And if it comes down to, you do have a breach and you said you were doing something, they come in and do an investigation and realize that you just checked the box, not knowingly that you didn't actually do that. Your claim could go unpaid, and you may be on the hook for that. So, and last but not least, the compliance part of it. Many organizations fall into some sort of compliance or another. Could be HIPAA, CMMC, whatever, PCI, SOC, all that stuff, DFS, here in New York. If you're an auto dealer, it could be Safeguard Act, things of those nature. So whose problem is it? Technically, if you ask most individuals this, everyone will probably gravitate towards it's an IT problem. That's really ultimately who is accountable for it. That isn't necessarily the case. It's really the top of the org chart. Typically, in larger companies, that's the board. And in smaller companies, it could be your C-suite or a C-level or something of that nature. That is who ultimately is responsible for or accountable uh, for cybersecurity. Now, there's one thing that, responsibility and accountability, there's two different ways of looking at it. Accountability is the person that has to necessarily answer for it. That doesn't necessarily mean they are the doers or the implementers. That's where responsibility comes into play. So basically think of it as the person that's accountable for it is where the buck stops with them. And anybody that's responsible for it is basically aiding that person in implementing those solutions. So usually, it's the other thing too is accountability can't be delegated, but responsibility can. So that's again, it's that board member. So the board, if you have a board, while they're ultimately accountable for cybersecurity, they're usually not the ones that are doing the implementation, the policies, and trickling that down to the org. Um, But in the event that something happens, ultimately they are accountable for that incident. But it's a failed responsibility of somebody probably below them, or just something that wasn't thought of, and they got around your controls perhaps. Management, anybody next in line there, needs to make sure that they're also aware of at least your cybersecurity policies and implementations. They should also actively participate in those, even if they're not directly involved in them. You need to get that input. You also need to include everybody, all the people underneath management, the people on the floors, the other folks that may not be in board levels, C levels, management. They need to be involved too, because ultimately anything you put in place when it comes to cybersecurity may affect their jobs. It could affect their efficiencies. They may, and we'll talk more about that when it comes to shadow IT, they may be doing things to get around security policies that are in place, to make their job easier, because there's things in place that affects them. If you don't get that input from them, you may or may not know that this is actually happening. So it's just something to keep in mind. And we'll talk more specifically about this as we go. So how bad is it? This is actually, and the new version of this. This is from 2024. This is the Verizon breach report. Anybody in security usually waits. It looks forward to this report. It usually comes out in late January, early February. So looking forward to this year's release of it. No, this is data from, because it comes out at the beginning of the year, it's data basically tabulated from the year prior. So this is actually data from 2023. But you can see typically here the way that the bad guys are very tactful in how the methods that they're using. No longer is it necessarily going after vulnerabilities. So, in the past, it was looking for a vulnerability, attacking with that weakness, and then using that weakness to get inside. Now it's really about credential theft. It's about phishing. So they're no longer attacking the technical layer; they're attacking the human layer. And the reason for that is because it's much easier to have a human let you in the technology than to try to breach the technology. Using a real world analogy, if you have an alarm system in your home, in your personal home, that alarm system is only as good as it being armed when you want it to protect your home. If I walk up to your door, knock on your door, you open the door to see who it is, I've effectively, you know, got you. Well, first of all, you have to disarm your alarm to open the door, otherwise you're going to set your own alarm off. But I've effectively got around your controls in place to protect your home. You don't know if I'm a bad actor, if I'm not a bad actor, if I'm lost, if I'm the mailman. Maybe you have cameras or something that you could identify that, and you just choose to ignore it. But that's the kind of real world thing. You go after that human element. And then the graphs here on the right, you can see it's just really going after that human element. That top bar up in the top here, this top section here, this is really attacking the human element. And as you go down through here, you can see there's some other things here, but really the third party weaknesses and stuff are really at the bottom here. So you can see they're heavily in the top sectors here, really going after human elements. And we'll talk about how they do that, and I'll show you some examples. So what is the method? Is basically social engineering. You are manipulating people to get them to do what you want. It's extremely easy to do, and the more information you have about your target, the easier this becomes. I can strike up a conversation with a complete stranger if I heard you having a conversation with somebody that you maybe like a specific sports team. I can just literally go right down the path of that, and you're actively communicating with me, and engaging with me because of that previous conversation that maybe I heard. Maybe I'm watching, if I'm physically targeting you, maybe I'm watching your Facebook page or your Instagram page or any of your social media things. I can get a ton of information from folks that could be useful in these type of attacks. And the bad guys are doing that, just so you know. They are definitely doing that. So, first of all, be cautious what you put out on social media, because while you think it might be private, it's not. Even though if you have the controls to keep people out, there's ways of getting around that through the back end that aren't necessarily just going to the web page and viewing it. So just be aware of that. So the common attacks, obviously phishing, email is a big thing. We all talk about that. Spear phishing is just a more targeted version of that. And BEC is an acronym that stands for Business Email Compromise. What they try to do is to get into an existing person's email account, and once they're in that account, if they compromise that account in one way, shape, or form, they leverage previous conversations or ongoing conversations, perhaps, and try to manipulate others into this, and it just basically starts to snowball out very, very drastically, very, very quickly. If you're doing financial transactions and they happen to compromise an email account with someone that's doing financial transactions and it's still in the works, sometimes they inject themselves in there and say, "Oh, hey, by the way," pretending to be the person of the account they just compromised. Hey, we just changed financial institutions and we're going to change this to a different bank. Here's the new routing information. If you're not verifying and validating that stuff, you could eventually send that information to another person's a drop account, basically, that's set up at a bank account with stolen identity, and that money's gone, or you're wiring it someplace else. So just be aware of that. Trends. Typically, ransomware, that's when they lock your data and hold you hostage, and they say you have to pay them X amount of crypto coin to get access to that data. Sometimes it's extortion where they threaten to post it or sell it on the deep or the dark web. And sometimes it's both. Sometimes they do both. So you definitely want to try to avoid those situations. Uh, Automation, and again, we'll touch base on this a little bit more, but AI is actually being leveraged by the bad guys to potentially come up with and send out very, very convincing, very, very convincing phishing campaigns, even down to videos. And we'll talk more about that when we get to the AI section. Social media is, again, you can be scraped. You could scrape in, not only LinkedIn. It's not just the social platforms. It's also the business platforms too. A lot of companies. In fact, it happens to us here at PCA. Every time we bring on a new person, we usually post on our LinkedIn page. Hey, welcome to who just joined us. And it's guaranteed that that person is going to get an email, supposedly from our CEO, asking them to go buy gift cards. It's just been going on for about 2 years now. And so when we hire somebody new, we let them know, hey, you're going to get an email from somebody that says it's our CEO. It's not our CEO. Just ignore it. You don't need to go buy gift cards. But it's, somebody is watching our LinkedIn page and trying to manipulate that situation because somebody new coming in is like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to say no to my brand new CEO. Are you kidding me? That's exactly what they're doing. They're trying to manipulate and use a live situation to get that out of somebody. The WHO could be criminal groups, could be hacktivists. Sometimes it's nation states. The other thing to keep in mind, it could be insider threats too. You have to definitely know your people. Sometimes the bad guys are enticing insiders, and promising them, oh, hey, if we get a ransomware or whatever, we'll give you a piece of the pie or whatever. That's happened at a few organizations. It happened at Verizon. It's happened at Amazon before. Those people were quickly caught and obviously now have federal offenses. So you've got to think about the repercussions there. So just be aware of that. The attack vectors, usually a cloud or internet. Sometimes it could be mobile, wireless networks. Rarely is it physically on site unless you're physically being targeted, but you also need to be aware it could happen physically on site too. So if the bad actor is local and your company has a local presence, that could also be a vector as well too. So let's talk about some of the things that you can do and ways to avoid stumbling in some of these attacks. So the first one here, we're gonna touch base on web browsing. It does kind of lead into email, but let's go down this path first. So keep your web browsing, if you're at work, keep your web browsing to business use only. If you do that, you limit your exposure to potentially falling innocently on a site that you think is valid that isn't. It may be set up to scrape credentials. It could be set up to entice you to put credentials or financial information in. So, things we just passed the holidays. So typically this is really important over the holidays. A lot of folks do their Black Friday shopping or their Cyber Monday shopping and all that stuff while they're at work because God forbid they don't want to miss a deal. So, they have all their shopping and stuff at work. That's bad because some of their shopping sites could potentially be malicious. Again, social media, we already touched on this. If you don't use this for business purposes, stay off of social media while you're at work. Wait till you get home or use your cell phone on your data plan to check your statuses or update what you had for lunch, since everybody seems to care what everybody else has for lunch or dinner or where they went and all that stuff. Just be aware you're also telling anybody that's watching your account where you physically are at that given time. So if they're trying to break into your house, you're also telling them that your house is empty while you're doing that. So not saying you can't post your vacations and things like that, but you might want to do it when you're back from the vacation and not while you're at it. Um, Browsers, this is targeted heavily, and we'll show you examples of this that, they realize security folks like me are warning people about this, making sure your browsers are up to date. That goes back to the software bugs and things that we talked about earlier. That's a little lower in the list, but um, uh, there's always updates and things when it comes to browsers. I'll kind of show you where to look for those. Sometimes if you're opening a new browser, it'll tell you that, hey, there's an update that needs to happen. Click here or whatever. But I'll show you pure examples of that. And then pop-up windows. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. There's a lot of pop-up blockers built into the new browsers now, so this isn't as big of a deal. But if you are in a situation where you're not sure whether the pop-up is legit or not, and the software itself didn't stop it, you can hit Control W on your keyboard. That usually closes down the window with focus, which tends to be that pop-up window. If that doesn't work, you can hit Alt F4. That'll actually close the entire browser down. But keep in mind, you will lose any other tabs that you have open, basically like you're closing the browser forcefully. So this is one attack. This kind of focuses on a couple of different things that are human tendencies. So first, humans don't like to remember passwords. They don't like to have a bazillion different accounts for a bazillion different websites. And while I will say I do highly recommend that, you should have a different login for every single site you go to, because and we'll talk more about that here shortly. So this is actually leveraging uh, it's called single sign-on. That's what SSO stands for, single sign-on. So what this is let's say you have a Facebook account or an Apple account, a Google account, Discord account, Steam account. If the site you're visiting or whatever you're going to visit is part of a federated single sign-on, that means that site is able to use one of your existing logins, and typically it's the ones listed there on the screen. There's more to this, but typically it's these here, and it allows you to log into that site using a different website's credentials. So in this case, we're logging into Canva, and in this case, we're using your Google login to potentially log in to this site. So you're going to Canva. You don't want to use your email or actually set up a login for that. You want to use one of your existing ones. This is going to leverage your Google account. So you put your Google email address in there. It's going to ask you for your Google password, and it's going to let you authenticate because it's going to check those credentials on the back end and let you in if they're correct. Now, the bad guys are setting up fake versions of this. And the problem is, it's extremely, if you happen to fall on one of these, it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to detect visually. And it's extremely easy to fall for too. So if you are using single sign-on, pay attention because this is very important. So I have a couple examples here. The first one is using Facebook as a login. So what happens? You go to visit a site, and this screen, one of these boxes here is going to pop up in the middle. We'll start in the upper left-hand corner here, and it's going to pop up in the middle of the screen saying, "Okay, I'm using your Facebook account. Enter your Facebook account info or phone number and your password, and hit login." So on the right-hand side is the real version. On the left-hand side is a phishing version. So if you look at these pound for pound, visually, you're not really going to see any red flags aside from the fact that I have them labeled. Even the padlocks in the corners of the fake one, if you actually click on that and look at that look at that cert, if you're technical enough to know how to do that, it will actually be the real Facebook, the same one that's on the real one. So they're going to match 100%. The URLs are the exact same thing on the fake one as it would be on the real one as well. So again, visually, there's absolutely no way for you to tell the difference between a malicious version of this and the real version of this visually. What happens if you put your information in the bad one? What happens is you're going to put your email in there, you're going to put your password in there, you're going to hit log in. Whatever site this happens or whatever you stumbled upon, it's going to actually let you log into the site you think you're logging into, but it's also sending that username and password to the bad guy that set that fake one up in the first place. So basically, it's designed to harvest that information that you're physically typing in there, and that's that's how it works. On the bottom right, it's the same exact thing. It's just this is now Google. The only difference, just quickly looking at it is the fake one does have create password on it, but or create account. But if you didn't see these side by side, that really wouldn't be a big red flag. Again, the URL here is the exact same thing as on the real one. And the padlock, if you look at the cert, is the exact same thing as the padlock on this one as well, too. So again, visually, there's no way. What happens, again, you put it in the bad one here, now you're sending your Google information to the bad guy. So that's just how these are designed to set up. So visually, no way to tell. How can you tell? If you do leverage SSO in this, and again, my personal thing is use different accounts for every single site. And the reason why I recommend that is because in the event that you do happen to fall for one of these, or someone happens to get your single sign-on account information, now they have access to every single site that you use that on as well. Not just one site, they have it everywhere else that you potentially use that at. That's the advantage of using individual logins for that, and we'll show you how to do that later down the road and how to keep track of that more effectively. But in this case here, if you do use single sign-on, the one way to tell is, again, we'll just use the Google example down here in the bottom. If you are visiting a site that you're trying to log into with single sign-on, this box is going to pop up in the center of your screen and ask you for the credentials here. What I want you to do is keep in mind this box is popping up in an existing browser. So think of that in an existing browser window that you already have open, whatever website that was. We can use Canva in the background. So behind this window is the Canva website waiting for you to put your information in there. What I want you to do is I want you to grab this top bar and try to drag this whole window, that window that popped up. I want you to try to drag it completely outside the border windows of that browser that's sitting in the back of it. So you want to try to get it outside of the browser. If that window actually stops right here at the borders of you trying to break out of that browser window, there's a good chance that that is a malicious version of this. Because this what looks like a pop-up window really is not a pop-up window, and it will be contained to that existing browser window in the back end. So if you think of this is the browser window that this is actually the browser window, and this actual screen that I just highlighted there is going to be popping up in the center of that. I want you to try to break that outside of these borders on the browser there. If it actually breaks out and drops to your desktop outside of that browser, it's probably the real one. So that's one way to tell, and it's because of how this fake one is made. It's really not a browser window. It just looks like one. And it won't let you break outside of the true browser because the code contains it inside the browser. So that's one way to tell. Or the safest bet, again, is just use individual logins and don't leverage single sign-on, and that'll keep you safe as well. So the other thing, as I mentioned briefly, security people are telling everybody to update their browsers. Well, the bad guys are trying to take advantage of that, and this is called a clear fake attack. So what happens here, again, this is limited if you keep your browsing habits to business use. It's typically you won't stumble upon these potential sites, but you go to visit a website and it pops up saying, oh, hey, you need to update your browser. because you're going to visit this website. You can't view the content, and here's a handy link for you to do that. Or, again, on the Chrome side, you could have that. And again, there's a handy link there to update it. And then even Firefox, same exact thing. Here's another browser button for you to update that. Any website that you go to that is physically telling you on the website itself that you need to update your browser is more than likely fake. Um, that's not how that typically works. In most cases, if you need an update to your existing browser and you're opening it up from scratch, those notices will typically pop up in this area here saying, "Hey, there's an update waiting to be valid," or the three lines over here. There might be an up arrow or something. Saying, there's usually some indicator depending on the browser in these corner areas here, not in the actual web page itself. So just keep that in mind. That very rarely will you ever run into a situation, if never, that you visit a valid website that is going to tell you have to update that. So just be aware of that. So that leads us into email. So email, the tips for email, again, this is probably 95% of the social engineering attacks originate from email. So if you follow and be cautious to what our recommendations are here, you could potentially be much safer in regards to that because of how often these tactics are used. So my advice is, if you get an email and you're not expecting it, it has links in it, don't click on those links. I'll stand by that until I'm blue in the face. Some security people will argue with me about that, but the key is that they're trying to entice you to click on content. And you may think you're going to the right place. It may look like the right place. It may even hover over it. It might show you the right place. That does not mean you are going to the right place. And anybody that doubts me, I'll be happy to show you that real time anytime you want. I'll take you up on that challenge. And I can prove it out. So the reason why this is, and we'll show you examples of this, is if you're not anticipating it, open up a brand new browser. Go and open up a brand new browser, and you physically type in the website like you're getting a notice from your bank. And I'm not picking on one particular, but just say you're a key bank website or a customer. You get an email from Key Bank and saying, "Hey, there's something going on with your account. Click here to log into Key Bank." Don't click that link unless you're expecting that. Don't click that link. Open up a browser. I want you to type in keybank.com. Go there yourself by you typing it in, log into your account. If that email is valid, it's going to show you somewhere in that message system that it is valid. And we'll show you examples. Again, much like the browsing, don't mix personal with business. This is a big no-no. If you're not normally buying stuff on eBay or Amazon or PayPal or using any of those services, getting anything shipped to you, with your business account, you can eliminate a lot of those invoice tactics, shipping notice tactics, payment tactics that the bad guys try to do to get you to open up the email in the first place. You get one of them, I don't ship anything from UPS. Why am I getting this? Gone. Just delete it. You don't even have to consider what it is. If you are mixing business with personal, again, using Black Friday and Cyber Monday as a great example, you're not going to know if it's valid or not because, I ordered 50 gifts for my kids. Which one's shipping now? And you open it up and realize that it's a malicious attachment, and now you've just infected your work network. So very good habits to get. The other thing too is look, if something doesn't look right or feel right, your intuition and your gut is probably correct. There's a reason, whether you realize it consciously or subconsciously, there's a reason why you're feeling like that. And you shouldn't just dismiss it. Bring it to somebody's attention. Bring another person and hey, what do you think of this? Before you act on it or interact with that just have them take a quick gander. If you're not comfortable with that and you are a client of ours, call us. Our service desk sees these things all the time. And if the service desk can't make that judgment call, or there's still questions after they take a look at it, it usually comes across my desk and I open it and look at it in a very secure method that if it were to be malicious, it's not going to affect anything because I actually have it in what's basically a sandbox. If that sand gets dirty, I empty it out and put new sand in, but it keeps networks from being affected by that if you were to open that yourself. So always reach out to us, and it's a very quick process if you're one of our clients, or bring somebody else in, because it's real easy to manipulate a single person that you're interacting with. You start bringing in entities that aren't even in the conversation or in the mix that the bad guy, like someone like me, would not be aware of. It's much more difficult to manipulate two people than it is one person. So just be aware of that. And this is just an example visually. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because this just kind of shows you how they do attack. They send you an email. There's links that I tell you not to click on. It could send you to a malicious site that looks like the real one, and it isn't. It's designed to steal your credentials and then redirects you. The bad guy basically takes those credentials and goes to the real site, bank account, empties it out, and by the time you realize what happened, they're long gone. And you're kind of like, oh boy. So just be aware of that. So here's an example of phishing. So again, this is a common one. Couple things. So this one looks like it's coming from Microsoft, and it's basically saying your password's expired. Okay. Moving on here, not taking the context of this too deep right out of the gate. Hey, your password's expired, and you need to change it, or your email is going to stop working. So we're going to provide, again, this change your password link. And if one link isn't good enough, we're going to give you a second link to entice you to click on. This is a malicious email. It is not coming from Microsoft. And there's a couple of red flags on this. First of all, this says your password has expired. Not that it's expiring, that it's expired. Common sense would tell you, if my password's expired, how am I getting this email? Because your email wouldn't authenticate to get this email if it's already expired. You're in Outlook, this came into your email box, but they're telling me my password's expired. That's the first logical thing you should think of. If it said expiring, it might be a little more believable. So just, again, you got to kind of look at these and think about what they're actually saying. I know that's tough to do. A lot of us are busy. A lot of us are wearing multiple hats, things like that. But, it does go a long way, taking a little bit of time before you start interacting. Even if this was, even if this said expiring, what I want you to do, instead of clicking these links, because this isn't something that you're expecting at all, this just came out of the blue. What I want you to do instead is to open up a browser, again, a brand new browser window, go to login.microsoftonline.com yourself. The minute you log in there with your old password, if this is valid, it's going to tell you that your password needs changed. So again, it's one of those situations where you're getting to the right site at that point, instead of blindly following what looks like it might be the right site. And in this case, it's not. You click on one of these two links, you're going to put your email in there, you're going to put your password in there. And even if you have MFA, if this is designed good enough, you're going to approve the MFA. So now you've not only given them your username, you've not only given them your password, you've also given them an active token that they can replay in the back end, and they have full access to your email account, and they're going to business email compromise you. That's what's going to happen. That's exactly how it works. So again, you can avoid all that by just simply not clicking on these links, because that's exactly what they want you to do. So here's two real live examples that we have gotten. They're fairly hot off the presses. They've gone to a few of our clients that one did fall for it. Unfortunately, we were able to stop it before it got too far. And the other one, they didn't even fall for. But I just want to briefly go through this to just show that what we've got going on here. So you've got to be a little aware of some of this stuff. And I apologize, this is a little small on my screen here. Give me a second here. I want to see if I can't make this a little bigger for me so I can actually see this better. Yeah, here we go. All right. So we'll start on this one up here. So this one here, again, this is a password. It says, this does say expires today. So first of all, you're getting this email saying that your password is expired today. I don't know what in the world QEG Office 365 is. So that should be if this is truly coming from Microsoft, what is QEG Office 365? And why would it be coming from CarterProCare.com? I mean, that obviously this is really, really fake and very, very obvious in this case here, because you're not going to be getting a password reset for your Office 365 from someone from carterprocare.com. And to top it off, even if you look at this, this is the actual link to change your password. If you are technically inclined, sometimes you can hover over these and it'll actually show you where you're going before you get there. It's not always accurate, but in this case, this is even more humorous. Now I've got to go to change my Office 365 password. I've got to go to TikTok. This is exactly the kind of thing you should be kind of visualizing before you just blindly follow what some of these folks are trying to do and try to say, because it's very easy to potentially fall for some of this stuff. The one in the lower left-hand corner here is a little better crafted. It's not quite as obvious. And unfortunately, this is one that one of our clients' entities, an individual did fall for. We were able to stop it we detected it and stopped it very, very fast. But it's one of those situations where this one, I don't know if they were doing work with this person from Cache Valley Bank, or if that's somebody that they were. In this case here, again, if you have somebody that's blindly sending you something from a previous customer and you weren't expecting it, you should be on the phone if you recognize this person and verifying this with voice at a known number. I wouldn't necessarily even believe these numbers at the bottom here, because they could have been altered. If let's in this case, if this truly is a live person, if maybe Zach's account got breached at Cache Valley Bank. And again, I mentioned they use previous conversations or ongoing conversations. They may have had a conversation with you and are trying to entice you to follow through with something that may or may not be this actual individual. So if this shows up out of the blue, you should be picking up the phone to a number that you have in your record somewhere. Obviously, if it matches this, then that's fine. But I would do that way before clicking on this link, because again, if you hover over this link, in this case here, now it's sending you to another site that isn't even Cache Valley Bank. So again, this is going to either ask for financial information that you're going to get fraud probably happening from. But these are definitely examples of things that just happen to some of our clients, and things you should look out for, because these are the tactics that they're using. So spear phishing, this is a little more targeted. This usually goes after HR. Again, it goes back to that financial piece. It's usually someone pretending to be an inside employee, asking HR or payroll person to pay or to change their direct deposit information. And it's a situation where you should be authenticating and verifying those types of requests. Don't blindly follow them based on an email that you're getting out of the blue. You need to pick up the phone, go back into your employee record for that person and say, hey, did you make this, or actually physically make them come in and sign if you're still doing on-site work and not doing 100% remote, which some companies have gone to. So definitely verify those. So this one here is whaling. This tends to be the big fish. That's why they call it whaling. It's usually someone pretending to be the CEO or maybe a C-level suite person and targeting people underneath them. Again, I mentioned the one that happens here at our office that we make everybody aware of. But this could happen at a lower level too. So in this case here, it's someone pretending to be the CFO. I'm assuming Sean would be someone that would be maybe in the finance office or the billing office. And again, we're asking for wire transfers, or we're asking for eBay cards or Amazon cards or whatever type of cards they might be. Any type of financial transactions that are being requested via email only, you need to verify and confirm it's actually validly coming from the sender. You need to do that, and you need to do it with known credentials, not something that has been attached at the bottom here, because that could be altered information going to the bad guy as well, pretending to be this person. So you just need to be aware of that. The bad guys also realize that things are getting a little tougher for them, because people like me are telling a lot of folks, and I'm not just saying it's me, it's everybody in the industry is trying to make folks aware of this, that they're stooping to different levels now. So this is called consent phishing. So what this is doing, this is trying to take a little bit of the human factor out of it with common email. So somewhere along the line, this you could be at a website, this could pop up. You could be in an email and accidentally click a link, this could pop up. But what happens is this box pops up, and it's basically a Microsoft application that is asking for permissions. And if you're not careful and you don't blind or you just blindly hit accept here, what you're effectively doing is giving the bad guy who created this malicious app full-blown access to your entire Microsoft ecosystem without a password, completely bypasses multi-factor uh, and everything. So it is extremely dangerous. So if you ever get in a situation where you see a box like this pop up and it looks like this, you're a client of ours, call us immediately because it's very rare that you will see these in normal situations unless you're implementing new tools or new CRM packages or something like that. So better safe than sorry. Again, you want to definitely reach out and notify either your internal IT or again, if you're a client of ours, just reach out to our service desk. So quishing is another thing. This is leveraging QR codes, which became a big thing. Um, these are nasty little buggers as well too. So in this case, it's hey, got a new voicemail. Break out your phone and take a picture of me. Back 2, 3 years ago, some of you might remember there was a Super Bowl commercial that had one of these QR codes. Simply, it was a completely blank screen. All it was a QR code bouncing around the screen like the old Pong days for us old enough to remember that. It was just bouncing around the screen. And the statistics of people that scanned that code throughout that commercial lifetime was over 1 million people. There was absolutely no letters, no words, no nothing. It was just this image, an image similar to that, bouncing around the screen on a bare screen. And everybody wanted to know what it was. It was absolute marketing genius. It was harmless, but absolute marketing genius because it shows you how curious people are and how easy it could have been to manipulate them. Um, Happens a lot, slap a malicious sticker on a parking meter or on a touchless menu at restaurants. You got people following these things that don't even realize they're malicious because it's very difficult to know the endpoint of where this is taking you until after you've already gotten there, and usually that's too late at that point. So you definitely need to be aware of how you're utilizing these. I know a lot of folks are utilizing these. You just need to be aware of where it's coming from, if you truly trust it, or ask for the URL instead of a code. Because again, I know a lot of companies are using this as marketing things because it's easier for them. But there's definitely security risks in it because you really can't tell where you're going. You can't just, even if you take a picture of that, it's going to show on your phone, usually with a shortened URL that is cryptic. So you still don't know where you're going because until you get to the other end. So just be aware of that. So let's touch on AI real quickly here. The good, the bad, the ugly. So the good AI, if it's a huge buzzword. Is it going to take over the world and eliminate jobs? Everyone's job? No. Is it going to eliminate some jobs? It could, depending on what your job is. And that's where potentially the good comes into play. So the AI is used to increase productivity. It allows machine-driven automation for those jobs that are mundane that don't necessarily need a human to necessarily be doing them. So in the case, I'm just trying to think. I don't have real world examples, but let's say there's data entry or you got to pull things out of a spreadsheet that a human's doing now, but it's just a monotonous job and it's just it's not a really highly skilled job. You may be able to leverage AI for something like that, and have AI automate that process and do that process where that body can now be maybe pivoted to a job that might mean more to them and have more meaning across the board. So that's the good side of it. The bad side of it, as I kind of alluded to earlier in the conversation, is that it also now allows unskilled bad actors to potentially perform tasks, malicious tasks, with little to no knowledge of how to even do that without AI. Um, Now, the public versions of AI that are out there, the common ones, Copilot or Copilot and those, OpenAI, Gemini, those have what's called guardrails and constraints where the bad actors can't necessarily ask it to do what it would deem to be potentially malicious or harmful. There's guardrails in place on those. Now, much like you can social engineer humans, AI was created by humans, so there's also a way to social engineer AI as well. And it's basically done through prompt injection and manipulation, which is basically I can't just go into public AI and tell it to create a malicious application for me. Hey, create me a piece of malware that's completely undetectable. If I do that in public AI, it's going to come back and say, well, first of all, I'm probably going to show up on some watch list now because all that data is probably being filtered. That's just my personal opinion. But aside from that, it's also going to come back and say, I'm sorry, that's deemed harmful or malicious. I'm not able to do that for you. Okay, great. So depending on what I wanted that program to necessarily do, I'll just start asking different questions instead of being so direct. I'll ask different questions to get to where I ultimately wanted to get to in the first place. Create me a, a template, an email template to send out to multiple entities. It spits back those results. And then, okay, create that entity where it's going to insert links, manipulate that existing entity where it's going to create links to send them to XYZ site. Okay, now that's the next step. And you just keep going and going and going and going and going until you eventually get to an end product of what you ultimately asked for in the beginning. It's just AI doesn't realize you're actually asking it in layers now instead of directly, and it doesn't pick it up as malicious because you're manipulating the AI basically. That's the bad part of this. The other part is while the public versions of AI do have that, there's also some dark web versions that are completely unchecked. So you can ask that anything you want, and it will spit out those results. It's completely unguardrailed. It doesn't care if it's malicious or not. And if you stumble upon one of those, you can ask it to do anything you want. So again, it allows individuals that may not have the skill sets to do this physically or intellectually, and they can create all kinds of malicious stuff without the knowledge to do that, unfortunately. And it's pretty convincing too. Real quick, you may have heard the story about a foreign company that there was a financial person that was invited to a Zoom meeting, and basically during that Zoom meeting, it was with the CEO, and there was a couple other board members on that Zoom meeting. And at some point, that individual was asked to transfer money by either one of the board members or one of either the CEO or one of the board members. That individual did that, and then later found out that uh, that individual was the only live person that was in that meeting. Everybody else was AI generated, and they were basically talking and interacting with that individual as if they were live people. They got enough information from video feeds or voice stuff that individual didn't realize it until after the money was already gone. And so you got to be careful and just be aware of that. So just not to scare you, but just be aware of that. And if you are using AI and you didn't necessarily perform some security audits before, if your company implemented AI, let's say you're using Copilot, if you didn't go through and you're using SharePoint, you're using Teams, and you're using OneDrive, if you didn't go through and audit those security layers and you just blindly opened up Copilot, you could accidentally release and share sensitive AI could actually release sensitive information to folks that don't necessarily have the access to that or shouldn't have access to that if you're not careful. Sometimes you run into that with financial stuff, payroll stuff, that happens too. So before you implement this, you definitely need to make sure that there's permissions in place behind the scenes because AI is just going to scrape all the data. And if the permissions aren't correct, if the wrong person asks for that information, AI is just going to spit it back out. It doesn't care. So, it's just going to think it's a general request and not a secured one. So you got to be aware of that. If you're not leveraging AI and you're thinking about it, you definitely want to make sure that you're buttoning those things down beforehand, before you let that potentially run through. If you're not using SharePoint or OneDrive and you're just implementing AI, it's a little different story, but you really got to be careful if you are kind of baked into that Microsoft ecosystem, that you have the permissions and stuff in place. So real quick, anti-phishing tips, never click on links. Again, I'm going to hit that till I'm blue in the face. If you're not using external banners, please use external banners. That's this yellow banner here. So any outbound email that's coming inbound, this is very valuable for anybody pretending to be someone on the inside or pretending to be the CEO. If you're getting an email from your CEO and it has this banner on it, it's not your CEO, because it's not coming from an inside address. Or if you have an employee that's requesting HR documents or direct deposit information and it has this banner on it, it's probably not your employee, because if they were using their company email address, it wouldn't have that banner on it. So really good way to tell visually, and I highly recommend using those if you're not. Is financial requests, any email financial requests, make sure you're verifying with whoever's requesting that. And again, if something seems off, make sure you're reporting it before interacting with anything, because again, more than one set of eyes will definitely save your bacon in many cases. I'm going to skip over this one because we're running short on time, but vishing. So this happened at Caesars and MGM. Basically, someone called into one of the individuals on the inside there pretending to be their IT company, and that person gave them access to the machine, and basically they ransomware the whole casino across the board. So we tell our clients, if you're our client of ours, if you get a phone call out of the blue that is claiming to be us, and you might, it's very well possible it is valid. But what I always ask our clients to do is just tell the person, you know what, I'm in the middle of something right now. Can I call you back in 3 to 5 minutes? And get the person's name that you were talking to, hang up the phone, wait 3 to 5 minutes. Even if you're not busy, just do it. Hang up the phone, call back, ask for that individual. If it's us, they'll get transferred to that and we'll be good to go. That way you're not falling for potential victim, like those typical attacks. Smishing is the texting thing. These usually end up, hey, had a great time last night, and it's from an unknown number. Don't interact with that. Just block it and delete it. Don't interact with it. Otherwise you end up with probably illicit photos you don't want to see, or going down a path you don't even want to go down. That happens a lot. So just be aware of that as well. So shadow IT, real quick, what that is again, it goes back to not including people perhaps in some of these security policies and layers in the discussion of those. So could be as simple, and this doesn't mean it's necessarily malicious, but if someone needs access, or you got a PDF you need to open and you don't have a PDF reader, what's the first thing someone's going to do? It's very unlikely they go to the IT and say, hey, I need a PDF reader. So what do? They go to Google, oh, free PDF reader. Okay, great. Hit install. If you have the permissions to do it, now you have this rogue PDF reader. Is it valid? Is it not valid? Is it really real? Is it not real? It's a very, or an image viewer. I need to view this image or this file, whatever. Google it, put it on. That's the type of thing we're talking about. You shouldn't be adding software that isn't approved by the company or didn't get installed initially by the company without authorization. Remote access is another one. Oh, hey, I need to do some after hours work. I'm just going to log me in or go to my PC or whatever the latest and greatest one is out there. Do you have authorization to do that? Now you're punching holes into the internal network potentially, and that could cause a problem. Cloud apps. Oh, hey, I tried to email this document. I can't. It's too big. I'm just going to throw it in my iDrive or my iCloud or Google Drive or Dropbox. You can just access it from there. Okay, now you've got company data in your personal drives that the company doesn't know about, but the company is ultimately accountable for if that gets stolen or leaked, if it has client information in it. So again, it doesn't mean you're being malicious. You're just trying to do your job, perhaps, and those constraints are stopping you from doing it. And then sometimes there are cases where the security protections are deliberately being circumvented. That's a management problem and an employee problem that it has to be addressed once it's found out. So real quick, passwords here. As I mentioned, I highly recommend separate accounts for every single login that you have. I recommend high count characters when it comes to passwords, 14 at minimum, and it should contain special character, uppercase, and at least a number. It should contain all of those, all three of those, and at least one out of the 14 should be one of those. So it's one of those cases where that's a complex password. Now, there's absolutely no way you're ever going to remember all those logins and all those passwords. You have to leverage some type of password manager or vault. Not your browser, but some type of password or vault. There's a couple of them listed there. These are ones I would recommend. If the one you're using isn't on that list, there might be a reason for it, but initially, 1Password, Dashlane Keeper, Bitword, and Proton Pass. Those are real good ones. They will also keep you from potentially stumbling some of them if you leverage the auto fill-in features of the paid versions of some of these. If you stumble upon a malicious website, what happens is if you go to the real website, let's just use M&T Bank for example. You go to that real website. If you're using that feature, a lot of times your username and your password will auto-populate once you get to that site and hit login. It will actually auto-populate for you. If you go to a malicious version of M&T Bank and you're using that feature and it doesn't auto-populate that credentials, it's because the password manager realizes you're not on the real site. So that's another stopgap and benefit of using those password managers. It could keep you from stumbling upon a malicious site because it's not auto-populating that content. It knows it. So multi-factor, we kind of quickly touch on this. That's another set of another method of authenticating yourself. Username and password. Then it usually prompts you for a code on your cell phone. Typically, don't use texting. Don't use the SMS thing where it texts you a code. That's very insecure. You want something, either an app that you're looking at that's generating a number on your phone that you have to enter in, or sometimes it's a push. And hey, is this you logging in? Yes. Now, this isn't going to stop every single attempt. Multi-factor is not 100%. In fact, if you're being targeted, it's probably 70% now, maybe even in the mid 60s at best. If you're being targeted, you're probably going to get MFA. You're going to get compromised one way, shape, or form because they're being physically targeted. That doesn't happen very often. Most of the time, it's bulk, and you end up in the high 99s or high 90% ranges. So if you're not using multi-factor, please use multi-factor, but just know that just because you are using multi-factor isn't the golden ticket. Just remember that. So one way they can get you is this is something too. So this is if you're using that push thing where you log in and it pushes you, hey, is this you? The bad actors leverage that. And in this case, it only works if your credentials are already compromised. So if you're getting a push notification from one of your multi-factor logins, don't hit accept, because what's going to happen, they're just going to bomb you. Is this you? Is this you? Is this you? You're just going to get pissed off and say, yes, oh my God, stop, just driving you nuts. You're going to hit yes. That's the only thing that's keeping the bad guys out. Instead of doing that, what I want you to do is to figure out what account is prompting you for that. Immediately go and change that password, because the minute you do that, it's going to stop. Because that they have your username and password. The only thing keeping them out of your account right now is that MFA token. So that's something to keep in mind. This is, again, just a way of, I kind of mentioned this earlier too. There are ways of stealing an active MFA token. So, obviously when you log into a website, it's actually, and you're legitimately logging into the real website. You're also legitimately using the token or hitting yes here. That token, that authorization is saved. And it's saved on your computer, and it'll either time out automatically after a certain period of time, or it'll time out if you hit log out and clear your cookies. That also causes some problems, but basically the bad actors are basically scraping that data in the back end. And if they find an active token, an MFA token, they can replay that on the site that it's built for. That's how they steal and get around MFA sometimes. So again, goes back to don't stumble upon some of these malicious sites, or do it in such a way that either you're expiring the tokens yourself, or to some way, shape, or form by logging out or clearing your cookies, if that's another way of doing it. So real quickly here, don't click on links within emails. Again, I beat this to death and I apologize, but that will save your bacon 9 times out of 10. Get a link, you're not expecting it, please open up a new browser. Now, if it's something you are expecting, by all means, if you just change your password at one of the sites and just click, hey, we just noticed you changed your password, click here to confirm that you're expecting that. But if you get something like that out of the blue, don't click on that link. Always verify the person claims who they are. Utilize strong passwords and MFA. Make sure you're storing passwords securely. Again, I highly recommend using a password manager or a vault of some sort. Think before you act. Make sure your data is backed up as well too. So that is about it. I will check chat here real quick. I don't think there's anybody in chat saying anything here. So I appreciate your time. I had a fairly large audience today. Hopefully this was enlightening and keeps you it keeps you safe out there. But again, if you see something that looks weird, go with your gut, bring somebody else involved, have a look at it, or give us a call if you're a client of ours. So I appreciate it and have a great day, everybody. We'll see you later.